ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति
शान्तिः।
ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरु परम्परम्। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। कार्पण्यदोषोपहत स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेतः यच्छ्रेयस्यान्न निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्। ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविरविर्म एधि वेदस्य म आणिस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासिः अनेन अधीतेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तमाम् तन्माम् अवतु तद्वक्तारम् अवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति न साक्ष्यो अरिष्ठनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं तिरेरिव ऊर्ध्व पवित्रो वाजिनीव स्व अमृतम् अस्मि द्रविणं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षित इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
That was extremely well done, Bhageshri. We can see, I mean, I could tell you've put in a lot of effort. A lot of the small pronunciations right and a lot of the matras right. There were still a few things that were here and there, but I think a couple more times you do this and that would be you would be nailing it. Thank you so much for the seva.
Thank you.
Now we'll do the chapter 3 chanting. Kavita, you're doing the chapter 3 chanting today, right? I think I wanted to acknowledge one more thing. There are two rosters, I think, going on. One roster was the one that's going on the WhatsApp group, and the second one is in the Google Sheet that we just created. I would like us to all agree which would be the roster that we will work with, and then we'll stick to that, because I realize that there's already discrepancy between the two. So in one of the things, like for example, I thought that Kavita's chance was for chanting was last week, but then I think the Excel sheet was updated with that wrongly, whereas the one on the WhatsApp group said that Kavita had to chant today. So there's already the discrepancy beginning to come in. So let's stick to one. At the end of the class, we will all decide amongst ourselves when everybody is there, which way we want to keep track of our roster.
Yeah, I think we'll just stick to the WhatsApp group because it's easier for everyone to use. Not everyone should on their phone.
Yeah, okay. So then let's stick to WhatsApp group so that it's easier for everyone to refer to it. And we will star that WhatsApp message for everyone to refer to. Okay, going forward. Thank you. Kavita, you can go. Do you want me to go with you, or do you want to do it all by yourself? You can do it, right?
I'll try. If
Yes,
there is
please.
if there is any thing in between, please. Chapter 3, Karma Yogam. Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mada Buddhir Janatana Tatkim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava Vyamishreneva Bhagyena Buddhim Mohayasi Vame Tateham Vata Nischatya Yena Shreyoham Apniyam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Lokesmin Tvivida Nishta Puro Prakta Mayanaka Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam Na Karmana Manarambat Naishkarmyam Purushoshnute Na Cha Sanyasana Deva Siddhim Samadhi Kaschati Nahi kaschit shanamabi jadu tishtatya karma kriti karyate hyavashak karma sarva prakriti jairgunaihi karmendriyani sayyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyatan vimudatma mityasarasa uchyate. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabadejuna karmendriyai karma yogam asaktassa vishishyate niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jyohya karmanah sharirayatra pichate na prasidyeta karmanah यज्ञात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्ग समाचर सह यज्ञा प्रजा सृष्ट्वा पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः अनेन प्रसविष्यत्वं यशवोस्त्विष्टकामधुक् देवान् पावय दानेन देवा भावयन्तु वः परस्परं भावयन्तः श्रेयः परमवाप्स्यत इष्टान् बोहान् हि वो देवाः दास्यन्ते यज्ञभाविताः तैर्दत्तान् प्रदायैभ्यः यो पुङ्क्ते स्तेन एव चः यज्ञशिष्टासिनः सन्दः मुष्यन्ते सर्वकिल्पिषैः पुण्यते देवकम्पावः ये पश्यन्त्यात्मकारणात् अन्नात् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्यात् न सम्भवः यज्ञात् भवति पर्जन्यः यज्ञकर्मसु समुद्भवः कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षर समुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वखदं ब्रह्म नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम् एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयदीहयः अहायुरिन्द्रिया रामः मोहं पार्थ स जीवति यस्त्वात्मरतिरेव स्यात् आत्मदृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येव स सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते नैव तस्य कृतेनार्तः नाकृतेनेह कश्चन न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः तस्मात् तसक्तः सततं कार्यं कर्म समाचर असक्तो ह्याशरन् कर्म परमाप्नोति पुरुषः कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्थिता जनकादयः लोहशङ्करः मेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि I think that is about it. Like
So 21.
21. Okay. यत्यदासरतिश्रेष्ठः तत्तदेवेतरो जनः स यत्प्रमाणं कुरुते लोकस्तदनुवर्तते.
Perfect. So we'll memorize this last shloka, shlok 21 for this week. Thank you, Kavita. Very, very, very well chanted. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in the last class, we started discussing yajna in greater detail. So ordinarily, people think that yajna means the ritual of havan, the ritual of pouring oblations into a fire, the physical element of it all. But we read in chapter 3 that yajna has a much deeper meaning to it. And the shlokas from 9 to 16 were fully dedicated to explain to us what yajna means. So in shlok 9, where the concept of yajna was first introduced, Bhagwanji said basically, Yajnathat karmano anyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha. He very clearly enunciated that any act that is done which is not yajna will lead to bondage. So that was the first introduction. Then in the next shlok, he told us what is the history of yajna, where it was told that the mandate of yajna, how was yajna created? The mandate of yajna was created by Brahma when he created the universe. So this entire srishti, the entire cosmos, the whole universe, the entire nature is fully subjected to the laws of yajna. What is yajna? Yajna basically means that we do our duty selflessly for lok hit or lok sangrah, for the welfare of others, and we do it with Lord's energy for his happiness alone. We are not trying to impress anybody else here. We're trying to impress only him, and the results are dedicated to him back. When we do an action in this way, it is considered a yajna. Then he in the next two shlokas, in 11 and 12, he basically talks about the fact that yajna is the kamdhenu, right? Esho astvishta kamaduk. So yajna is the giver of all your wishes. Now, how is yajna the giver of all wishes was then expounded in the next two shlokas, where we were told that the way it works is that when we work to strengthen the systems, the system will strengthen us back. And every system that is there in this world, whether it is man-made or whether it is God-made. So when we take an example of a God-made system, it can be, for example, the cycle of food chain, or for example, the cycle of how the rainfall happens, right? That entire, these are God-made cycles. or in case of man-made cycles that we see around us, for example, the transportation, public transportation system, or the electricity system, or the waterworks, any public utility that we make use of, or any other societal arrangements that are there. All of these are various systems that all have a devta living within them, a devta or an energy, a small energy of the Lord is inherent in them. And through that Lord's energy, the gifts of that system are created and made available for our use. So when we respect them and we respect the devta in those systems, so when we consume, how do we consume, and what actions do we do towards them in a manner where our actions create value for the ecosystem in which we are, or for which we are partaking, or in which we are participating, then because we are part of that system, we will get benefited as well. So that's how acting with Yagya Bhav will become the giver of all our wishes and all our requirements. Then in Shlok 30, the concept of Yagya Shisht was introduced. So Yagya Shisht basically means that it was very, very big thing that was told to us, right? In Shlok 13, basically, Bhagwanji says that if you eat what is the remains of a yagya, you will not incur any sin. What does sin even mean here, right? Sin basically means bondage. So there would be no bondage. However, a person who acts in selfish interest only works towards his own gain. I am going to work for my benefit, for my promotion, for my bonus, for my family, my child, right? When we behave like that, that person has been termed thief in the Shloka 13. Bhunjate te twagham papa. Those people only eat sins. They are a thief. He have been very clearly said that. Then in Shloka 14 and 15, there is a very big assurance. The Lord basically says that when we do actions as a yagya, he is saying that he himself is present in our actions. It's a very big statement. So when you are doing your actions with Yagya Bhav, the actions that you do, the kriya, the karma, the equipments that are used, the karta, in all of these, the Lord that is present in the form of that devta, he becomes manifest. So that means Lord is not standing next to you when you're doing your actions. He is present in those actions. You are manifesting Lord in those moments. Okay. And so we have gone through this from Shlok 9 to Shlok 15. We basically understood what Yagya is, what is the history, when it started, why is it important to do Yagya, and what does it even mean, right? We got this theory in chapter 3, and then in chapter 4 now, we are basically trying to understand what are different types of yagyas in a practical way for different types of people. We're getting into deeper details of what actions will constitute of yagya, and you will begin to see that pretty much everything we do, or even if people are from different points of view that are coming from it, whether you're a Sankhya yogi, whether you're a Karma yogi, whether you're a Bhakti yogi, any form of path towards God you may take, you will have to perform yagyas. And every action of ours can be converted into yagya, whatever be it. So we started from between Shlok 24 to Shlok 13, chapter 4. All we are discussing are different types of yagyas for us to be able to read them and understand how our various actions, small actions through the day, fall within these different precepts. And once we become aware, then we should become aware of whether our bhav, when we are doing those activities, are they in alignment with the yagya bhav? Because action is anyway happening. We are anyway putting in all that effort. So why not convert it into a yagya so that we get the ultimate benefit of that action? The effort is anyway being put in, right? So we've seen so far different types of yagyas. The first one in Shlok 24 was the unity of perception, which is followed by the Sankhya Yogi. So if a Sankhya Yogi is present in this class, he would, from his point of view, there is only the class itself is God. The Lord is speaking, the Lord is hearing through a mechanism which is Lord's energy, and there is no one else. There is no you, there is no me. Every aspect is Lord and his energy. Okay, so everything is revered to as such. Then we saw that the worship of gods or demigods that we see, even that can be a form of yajna. As long as the one thing that is common thread amongst all the yagyas is the bhav. As long as the bhav is nishkam, you're not doing something with a sakam bhav. You're not doing something as a fruitive activity. I want something. So if you're praying to, whether you're praying to Shiv or Parvati or Jesus or any other form of deity that you may have, as long as you're doing it with full surrender to them, wanting nothing else in return, not that, oh God, please give me this or please give me that. If you're doing that, then it's not a yajna at all. Okay. If you're doing it with full dedication, then even that, even though it's a demigod, is only a form of energy of the ultimate Lord, it will still be considered Lord's yajna. Okay. Then we saw that control of senses of perception and control of the senses of action, that is also a yajna. So control of senses of perception would be something where if if your senses perceive something, that perception goes to the mind, but the mind does not react. There's a complete combustion of it. That is when when there's an external stimuli that comes in, you do not react to it, that you have that level of control on your mind. That would be a yajna, a form of yajna. So if somebody says something kadva, something nasty to you, or somebody comes and scolds you or shouts at you, if you do not react back, you're able to control it. In that moment, you are exercising yajna. If you're trying to hear and understand what is the content that he's trying to say, irrespective of the words or the tone in which it is being said, that means you have control over yourself and your reactions, and you're looking for the value. Bhagwanji is saying something, there is a message for me. What am I hearing? Can I hear the message? That is yajna. Similarly, when the action, the senses of action, when I'm speaking, for example, what words am I using? Am I being very conscious of the words that I'm using in any conversation? That is Vanika Tap, right? As an example. So actions that we do, that is another form of yajna. And then we read about the samadhi. Samadhi is a very high form of meditation, where a person, when you see somebody in samadhi, it's just the same as somebody sleeping, because there is absolutely no actions being done by the senses of perception, or there's no stimulation. They're not even, the senses are not even registering anything, except that in sleep your intellect is completely supt, it's slept, there is ignorance, there's delusion. But in samadhi, the only difference is your intellect is super awake. There is super consciousness. You're not just aware of your body, you're aware of the entire environment, so that your body consciousness has completely gone away. Your body is now one with the entire environment. That is samadhi, very high form of meditation. So that is also a yajna. And now we are going to the last one that we read.
Watch the Jesus movie.
So the last one that we read was the Shloka 28, and that's where we stopped. We'll read it again, okay, for the sake of completeness, and we'll start with that. Okay. Here is my pencil. Okay. So, Kay, will you read with me? Yeah, sure. Let's start with connection. We'll reread Shlok 28, although we did some part of it before.
Okay, connection. Some more types of yajna are now described.
So there is one change that I'll do in the pronunciation because I did it wrong last time. The sa in between the two words, dravya yajnas tapo yajnaha. I had said that we will not say it because we were going to do sandhi vichhed of the two. So the sa becomes the halant. But now we are going to read it together. So it should be read together and not with the sandhi vichhed. So I did that mistake last time, okay? Dravya yajnastapo yajnaha.
Dravya yatnastapo yatnaha.
Yoga yajnastatha pare.
Yoga yatna tataspare.
Yoga yajnas tatha pare.
Yoga yatnastata pare.
Swadhyaya jnana yajnascha.
Swadhyaya yajnaya yajnascha.
Yatayas sanshita vrataha.
Yataya samshrita vrataha.
Yeah. So we had done the word meanings already, so I'll do it very quickly. Dravya are the things that we use, the materials that we use in a havan. So in this example, in this shloka here, it basically means material acquisitions that we have. Tap is austerities. In yajna is yajna. Yog here means the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. Tatha pare, apare is others. Okay. Swadhyay is self-study. Gyan would be knowledge. Yajnascha is also yajna. Yataya is a yatnashil purush, people who make unrelenting effort. So not just any effort, not a casual effort, a determined, unrelenting effort, like a child makes when he's trying to learn to walk. He'll fall 10 times, he'll still get up the 11th time. He doesn't stop. He does not stop learning just because he's falling. He doesn't stop trying to speak just because he's not able to speak. No child says, oh, I cannot speak, so I will not speak, right? They continue to try and speak. They continue to hear. They continue to learn, and they continue to try. That is the determination. Okay, you don't stop because of anything. And Sanchita Vrataha is basically Tikshna Vraton se yukt, very strong vows. Somebody who's very determined. Yeah. Let's read.
Others offer their acquisitions and their austerities as oblations. Still others perform the yajna of yoga, of deep and intense scriptural study and of knowledge, all these being persons of rigid determination and of unrelenting exertion in practice. All these are explained below separately. The yajna of acquisitions, the utilization.
So let me just quickly add here, right? So the reason why we've talked about this in the last class, we're reading different types of yagyas, is to find our own relatability of where we can practice yagya, right?
And it won't just be one, right? You will realize that there are lots of different types of things you can do as a part of your daily life, whatever appeals to you.
Correct. And yagya in any amount is extremely beneficial. It doesn't like, we're not at the place where we can do it in all our actions immediately. So when you find examples that we are reading, you should be able to find that one or two things where you can start practicing yagya. And what does practicing yagya mean? That what Tuhina mentioned earlier is be aware of the bhav with which you do something. That doing something could be as simple as cooking a meal. That doing something could be as simple as doing a one-on-one with a team member, where you're offering yourself as a listener to them, as an encourager to them for their ultimate welfare and benefit. Right? So while we read all of these examples, try and reflect upon what yagya means for you in 2 or 3 different areas of your life and start practicing it at the bhav level. The action will happen regardless. Now, whether the action will create bondage or it will be releasing, that will be based on the bhav. And that's the yagya that I'd want all of us to be aware of.
And another thing to remember is that you don't have to go out of your way to look for opportunities for yagya. They will be presented to us in normal course of time as a part of our daily activities. As an example, I realized a couple of days ago that there is one charity that I have been constantly given and I have not taken it up, not out of the fact that I don't want to do it. There is this always this intention that I'll do it, but it just never comes up. It doesn't bubble up on my list of priorities to things to do. You know, it's just never become urgent enough to come up. So what is that charitable charity? Basically, a lot of people, because I have entrepreneurial experience now, so investors or other people who I know will send people like, can you please talk to this person? Can you please talk to that person? And sometimes I am able to talk to them, sometimes I'm not able to talk to them. The other day, 2-3 days ago, I was clearing out my WhatsApp messages, which are like tons of them. I'm not able to get to my inbox most days completely. So 3 days ago, I was looking at it and I realized that there is a person who one of my investors had introduced to me and said, please talk to him because he's going through something similar that you've done before. 2 months ago, 2 months ago, I haven't like talked to him, and I had suddenly, it became like the moment I saw that, it became aware like, oh my god, like I haven't, like this is an opportunity for me to do yagya, a charity yagya of like the first one that we'll do, the yagya of acquisition, my time, my resource, and I haven't prioritized it because life will always happen to all of us. So I immediately reached out to him and I set a time and we spoke on Friday. But I realized that I have done this with 2 people right now in the past. It just like, so I do not have to, if I think of charity, I don't have to go out of my way. It comes my way. Bhagwanji sends it to me. All I have to do is to take up that opportunity with gratefulness that I've been given the opportunity to do the seva. But we tend to be leaky buckets like I have been a lot of times without even realizing what we are letting go. We'll read.
Okay. The yagya of acquisitions. The utilization for general welfare of material acquisitions of any type earned by just and fair means without the desire of fame is also a yagya. It's not necessary that the performer may be a rich person. Acquisitions, howsoever big or small, can be utilized for this yagya. Construction of wells, temples, hospitals, schools, and the like, and selfless service of scholars, students, patients with materials, or even with a benign and sympathetic attitude would also be a yagya for this type. The yagya for austerities. Fasting and bearing physical and mental sufferings gladly for righteous dealings, living an austere life, giving up food and being totally unmindful of heat and cold, all for self-realization constitute this type of yagya.
So let's discuss the first part a little bit more, right? The yagya of acquisitions. So here Bhagwanji is very clearly saying that it's not a bad thing to earn money and to wish for a comfortable life and accumulate wealth. All that is, it's either in our destiny, it's part of our vibhuti, it's part of our sanskar to go and do it. What you need to be aware of is the purpose with which you are accumulating that wealth and using it. What is the bhav behind it? Do you have, and this is really, it hits home sometimes because we're so steeped in sansar. I recently went through an experience where made a purchase. I was about to make a very expensive purchase. And in my mind, that comparison just kept coming on. That uske paas kya hai, iske paas kya hai. And in my mind, I was just like, I can see that my mind is going there and I could be aware of it. But I kept reminding myself that no, my identity has got nothing to do with this acquisition. This acquisition has its own purpose, and that purpose is to spend time with my family, to be slightly healthier in body. It's a cycle, and it's to make sure we experience our neighborhood better, right? With my son, so that he gets more into an active lifestyle. But this yagya of acquisition is very important, because you have to be very clear why you're acquiring something. You could be getting a really big house, but then is it a house where you are able to find a place for quiet meditation? Is it a place where you're going to get people together so that it becomes a satsang for everybody? Or is it a place where, oh, my friends have it, that's why I want to have it? Right? And that it's the subtle at that bhav level when you acquire things and how you use them that changes an activity or an acquisition from bondage or to it being a yagya. That makes sense?
And I think the overall, when you start looking at everything that you're doing as a form of yagya, then you start to connect to Lord in very different ways. So we have actually a group called the Yoga. It's a group that's called Yog Sadhana. It's open to everyone. So if any one of you is interested, I'm happy to add you to that Yog Sadhana group. Basically, what happens there is it's a WhatsApp group where people are practicing how to see Lord in everything, in every moment of your life. So people tend to see Lord sometimes in just the way sun rises, or in the nature, in flowers, in like things that they see, and they just take a picture and they put it on that Yog Sadhana group, and then they explain what they saw in it. And it's amazing how people are able to, like, so it's a practice, right? Yog Sadhana is just, it's a practice to get connected to Lord. So if any one of you is interested, I'm happy to add you. You can let me know afterwards. But importantly, it's the example that Abhinav gave, like the acquisition of the cycle. When we were thinking about it, one of the thoughts was that, are we going to go for it or not? Is like, you start to see God's hand in it. How, when Lord is behind you and he wants something for something, some action to be done, it becomes very sahaj. There is no effort involved. It's where it becomes extremely easy as long as you're following on his path. So in this example, there were a couple of people. We had never bought this kind of cycle before, had no understanding of it. And there were two people who are extremely adept cyclists who came around, gave me all their understanding, even told me how difficult it is. We came to know later on that the entire supply chain of cycles is really disrupted across the world. So it's very difficult to get some kinds of cycles. You can have 6 months to 12 months wait, and it's world over. We had no idea until they told me. And then they said, oh, I'm trying to get a cycle. My wife ordered for me. It's taken a year. Now I'll get it after like 8 months or something like that, right? I was like, wow, like this seems so difficult. And then one of this person only told me to go to the cycle shop, go talk to them. I went there, talked to them, and immediately the lady said, oh, you're very lucky. We have this type of cycle, exactly the type that you need for the size that you need, coming in next 2 weeks. And it came in less than 2 weeks. So it's all like when the moment she said it, I was still thinking whether this makes sense or not. The moment she said it, it was like everything is tying up. I cannot believe this is like, there are no coincidences. Miracles are his way of talking to you and giving you guidance when you're seeking. Like, is this the right thing to do? And he will tell you yes. And when I heard it, I was like, okay, this is God speaking to me and saying, yeah, go ahead. Don't worry about it. Go ahead, make the purchase. It's the right decision. So you'll start to see Lord's hand in very, very small things, in everything that you do.
And just to highlight like this entire line, that it's not necessary for you to be rich to do yagya of acquisition.
Yeah.
It's just changing the bhav with which you use everything, right? And how you use those things. What do you use it for?
Yeah. Right? So like if cycle also has a devta inside it, right? When you look at everything with that reverence, then the way you will treat that cycle, the way you will take care of it, you will take care of it with a lot of reverence, right? You're not going to throw it around. You're not going to be like, oh, it's dirty, I'm going to leave it. You're not going to drop it around. You will actually treat it with reverence. And then what happens when you're treating it with reverence, as in chapter 3, parasparam, you are going to give it mutual respect. That cycle will respect you back and will give you the benefit of a good working condition.
So I'll give you another example that I was thinking when I read this is in Diwali, at least in our house, when we had Diwali Puja, it was always said that you take a new book and you write Om on top, right? And then you make the swastik sign, aap uski prayer karo, usko you put that in the mandir, you pray for it, etc. And I've seen it growing up throughout. And my dad always said, oh, this is the tradition because this is the start of a new year. So it's an accounting thing that before you start your accounting book, you pray to it so that the next year you're praying to Lord Lakshmi and you're praying that it will be a fulfilling year. So as a young kid, I always understood, oh, it's basically you're hoping that you'll be very successful, you'll make a lot of money. I like it. Good idea. Right? I wanted to buy a workbook for my diary. Like I wanted to buy a diary for my work. And when I bought it, the first thought that came to my mind was, oh, now I understand why people pray. It's not for the money. It's for that everything written in this book is for yagya. Everything that I do in my work, I'm doing for him. I'm doing it as yogakshem. I'm doing it as an offering. And by writing that Om and praying to the book, you're just connecting all your work to Lok Sangraha. And that's the real bhav with which you do it actually. It's just that a ritual then becomes so easy to adulterate. If you take the bhav, it becomes so easy to adulterate and say, oh, it's for the money.
So
but when you bring the bhav back, you're like, it's just a reminder that all the work I'm going to be doing, all my to-do lists is a yoga, it's a yagya bhav. It's yagya for me to do this. And it's just small things like I encourage you to find your ways to find yagya in your activities. Yeah.
So as Om Swami has said in his book, he's written a lot of books. One of the books that it's called the Memoirs of the Monk. If truth be told, it's that book. So he says in that book that if you have basically rituals, right? If the bhav is taken out of it, if there is no connection to the Lord through that action, then it is like a dead corpse. So we have to be very, very careful of how everything that we do connects us to the Lord. It must be a source of connection. Let's read.
The yagya of yoga. Some aspirants follow the precepts of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, in which the control of thoughts of the mind is called yoga. This yoga has the following 8 limbs: yama, a set of don'ts; niyama, a set of do's; asana, perfection of posture; pranayama, control of vital power; pratyahara, control of senses; dharana, contemplation; dhyana, concentration; samadhi, meditation. The technique of this yoga can be learned from a competent teacher with the help of commentaries on the subject. The yajna of self-study and of knowledge. An intensive and devoted study of the scriptures for the knowledge of the self and for achieving oneness with its constitutes this type of yajna. Singing the praises of the Lord, chanting of his names, and the like are also included in this. All these yajna.
The most important thing in this last paragraph is for the knowledge of the self and for achieving oneness with it, right? So you can learn 700 shlokas of this Gita and expound on it, but if you have not managed to put it into your life, if you're not living the Gita principles and you've not used it to connect to the Lord, be able to rise above the dualities, then it's of no use at all. If you have learned all 4 Vedas, if you can chant extremely well, but you're not implementing it in your life, then it is of no use. Right? So there has to be a purpose behind what we are doing. And the purpose is one and one alone. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Vyavasayatmika buddhi has only one goal. And an irresolute buddhi, an irresolute intellect has many goals. We had read that in chapter 2. So we have to work with the Vyavasaitmika Buddhi, with one single goal. Purpose of everything is one and one alone, to connect with the Lord. And then He will do our yogakshem.
So the opposite of what Tuhina said is also true, which is a person may not know any of the 700 shlokas.
Yeah.
But if that person is already practicing oneness with Bhagwan Ji, then he's already achieved self-realization. So it's not as if this is what is required as a stepping stone to get there. No, the goal is same for every single person. It's just that for us, this has become a very important tool, a trampoline to get there.
Correct. So Kabir never read Gita, right? But look at his dohas. They tell us what a saint he was, because he
And-
was living it.
And there are many, many other different ways you can get there as well. It's just that in our lives, this is an opportunity that has come. And most of us know that we've been looking for it, and it's not that easy to find a group of people to read it with. So use that as reverence. Do it as yagya so that you're achieving your oneness. And let this be a trampoline for us to leave sansar.
And like I said, we don't have to go out of our way for anything, right? What is important for our specific journey, it will come to us. You just have to ask that I need to reach you, Bhagwanji, and then He will give you the circumstances, the tools, the people, everything that you need on this journey. So the fact that this book has come into our lives, it means that for us, Bhagwanji thinks this would be a good mechanism. It would be a great tool for us specifically. Okay. And so now that it has come in our lives, let's use it with that reference. But we don't have to go out of our way. So for example, in case of Kavita, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, right? The one that we talked about, I understand that it has come to her naturally. She has seeked it out, it has come to her, and she practices it. It hasn't come to me yet. It is there somewhere in my mind space, but it has never made itself available to me in a sahaj manner, that it becomes natural for me to go that way. So far, somewhere in my life journey, it is not there yet. I will not go out of my way, leave all my other duties to go and find it. When it has to come to me, it will come to me. And if it doesn't ever come to me, that means it's not important for me in my journey. What is important for me, God will make it available for me here and now. So we just have to be conscious of our lives here, be very present to our life as it is happening now, the VVGP that it is happening right now. And that's all that I need to do to be able to live this life as a yagya. My entire life can become a yagya and must become a yagya eventually.
I think finish reading.
All these yagyas require unremitting determination and relentless efforts. But the physical and mental strain borne in these practices is nothing compared to the infinite felicity obtained from the realization of the self.
Yeah.
Cami, will you read for us next?
In the next two shlokas, the Lord describes the yagyas relating to pranayama.
Pranayam.
Pranayam.
Apane juvvati pranam.
Apane juvvati pranam.
Prane panam tatha pare.
Prane panam tattare.
Pranapan gati rudva.
Pranapanagati rutva.
Pranayama parayanaha.
Pranayama parayanaha.
We'll read the next one as well. Apare niyataharaha.
Appare niyataharaha.
Pranan praneshu juvvati.
Prana pranahnishu juvati.
Sarve pyate yajna vidaha.
Sarvepyata yajñavida
Yajna kshapita kalmashaha.
yajña yajña shapita kalmashaha.
Very nice, very nice. Apane is in the apan vayu. So we'll learn what is apan vayu as well. Juvyati is offering, offer. Pranam is pran vayu. Pranayapanam is offering of apan vayu in pran vayu. Tatha pare anya kitne hi, lot many others. Prana pan gati is pran and apan ki gati ko, the direction of pran and apan vayu. Rudva, rok kar, by stopping. So by stopping the direction or the movement of pran and apan vayu. Pranayam parayanaha, a person who is practicing or is in the direction of pranayam, who's practicing pranayam. So pranayam is a form of I don't know what to say, yoga, form of yoga practice, a form of how you can do meditation to
Yeah.
control
Breathing
your-
practice.
Yes, it's a breathing practice.
It's breathing practice with the intent to connect with the intent to connect your breath to Bhagwan Ji.
Yeah,
Yoga.
with an intent to concentrate or focus the mind, basically. Apare is dusre, others. Niyatahara, by regulating the food intake. Pranan praneshu, prano ko pran mein hi, by offering the vital power. So the pran or the vayu that we are talking about, there are 5 different types of vayus that are considered. They are basically part of vital power, the vital power that is there in our body that creates this consciousness in the first place, right? Juvyati is offering. Sarve pyate, or sabhi sadhakiye, and all other sadhaks, all other practicing people. Yajna vida, yajna ko janne wale hain, those who understand what yajna really is. Yajna kshapit kalmashaha, the yajna dwara papon ko nash karne wala. So purification of sins by yajna. Kalmasha is sins and kshapit is destroying them. Yeah, let's read.
Others who are engaged in the restraint of vital power offer the outgoing vital power into the incoming, and the incoming one into the outgoing, or they restrain the passage of both. Others, strictly regulating the food intake, offer vital power as oblation into itself. All of these, completely purified of sins, have a perfect knowledge of yagyas. The yagyas of pranayam, prana, is cosmic power which is carried by the incoming and outgoing breaths in the physical system. It is the vital power in the body, and it operates between the navel and the nostrils. Apana is the form of vital air which throws out the fluids and excreta. It operates downwards from the navel to the feet. When the vital power is drawn in by the inhalation called the puraka and is held there, it is called internal kumabaka, or retention.
Yeah, so before we read the next part, right, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the breath, right? I think we should be aware that the breath, we know this, the breath is the only part of function of our body that we both can control and do involuntarily, right? It happens involuntarily while we're busy in tasks. It just keeps going on and on. But it also is something we can control should we put our mind to it, right? And that's a lot like our and that gives us a great amount of power to control our mind. So in fact, chapter 6 of Gita talks a lot about meditation, the right technique, aap kaise, how do you do it, how do you sit, where do you do it, what time of the day, etc., etc. But the other part of the breath, which is to note, is that it is the starting point of vital force into our body. It is the starting point of oxygen going in and powering our entire system. That means there is a piece of Bhagwanji that comes into every single breath of ours and activates everything else. When we eat food as well, we have millions and billions of bacteria that are sitting there that digest the food. We're not really doing it ourselves. And it all starts with the breath, right? So breath becomes a very powerful way to connect with Bhagwanji, which is why meditation, people have talked about it more than enough as a very powerful way to still the mind, calm the mind, connect with the universe. This shloka will talk a bit about it, and then we'll discuss it more in chapter 6 as well.
This is termed in Shlok 29 as offering of the incoming vital power into the outgoing. The reverse process of blowing out is called vihaka, and holding out is called the external vivaka. This has been termed offering the outgoing vital power into the incoming. By constant practice of this process, the thought waves in the mind subside without any loss of time, and the concentrated mind is absorbed easily in the supreme consciousness. But this technique should be learned under the supervision of a competent teacher, as even a slight deviation from the canons of the discipline can result in grave harm. The stoppage of both the outgoing and incoming vital power has been termed offering the vital power into itself as given in Shlok 30. In the second line of the shloka, the Lord says that those who have perfect knowledge of yagyas are completely purified of all sin. In all the varieties of yagyas, that there is a common factor, and that is their performance with a selfless spirit and with complete dedication to the Lord. Performance of yagyas with some selfish desire completely frustrates the effort.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vijay, will you read with us?
Connection. Ordinarily, people think that yajna means only offering oblation into fire. But foregoing slokas, the Lord has given it a wider definition so as to include the term yajna, the performance of all duties done selflessly and with dedication. Now, the Lord explains benefits of acquiring from yajna and harm resulting if yajna is not performed.
Yajna shishta mritam bhujaha
Yajna shishta mritam bhujaha
yanti brahma sanatanam
yanti brahma sanatanam
nayam loko satya yajnasya
Nyayam loko satyayajnasya
kuto anya kuru sattama.
kuto anya kuru sattamam.
Yajna shisht is the remains of yagya. We had read about this in chapter 3, Shlok 13 as well, that we talked about before the start of the class, right? So anyone who eats the remains, who partakes of the remains of the yagya, will never incur any sin. So yagya shisht, amrit is nectar, bhuja is partake, yanti प्राप्त होते हैं, attain, Brahma, Supreme Lord, Sanatanam, eternal, Nayam, not this, na ayam, not this, Loko, in this world, the Manushya Lok, in this world, Asti, hai, Asti yadnyasya, so, ayadnyasya, yeah, ayajnasya, who do not perform yajnas, those who do not do their duties selflessly, right? Those who do not perform yajna. Kuto anyaha, kuto, how, kuta, how? Anya in other world. Kuru Sattama is Kuru Shresht Arjun, the best among the Kurus. That's how he's referring to Arjun, the best among the Kurus. We'll understand when we read the meaning. Let's go ahead.
Those who partake of nectar of the resultant product of yajna attain to the eternal supreme self. For those who do not perform yajna, even this world does not give any happiness. What to say of the hereafter?
So here we have, this is another way of saying the same thing that we heard in chapter 3 shloka 13, where Bhagwanji is basically saying, what is Yagyashisht? That you do your duties and then make sure that everybody who has participated in that Sahayagya with you gets the resultant value out of it. And only after everyone else has taken will you partake of it. Now the fact that you are partaking of a Yagyashit is not something new to us. We have experienced it several times before also. Like our mothers, when they are cooking food, they typically make sure that everybody in the family eats the food first. And we've seen our mothers come in the end, right, to eat the food. Or when parents serve, they will serve their children first. In a company, similarly, making sure that we do our duty first and everything is done. In the end, whatever performance bonus comes, it comes, or it may not come, whatever is the result, right? So whatever we do, if we make sure that everybody who's participated gets their share first, think of others first, have everybody else got what they needed, what they deserved. After that, whatever are the remains, whatever be the remains, when you take them in, they give you that eternal bliss that creates no bondage at all. And that is called an amrit. It is nectar. Nectar is what gives you immortality. So how will you get immortality? Is when you are not linked to this body consciousness, because this body consciousness creates mortality. If the fact that you're eating yagyashisht, you're partaking of the remains of the yagya, that means you are related to Krishna consciousness now. If you are in his world, then there is no mortality. So you're consuming nectar. And that person hence attains the Supreme Lord because you become one with him. But the person who doesn't do that, he has been termed thief. He is a thief because he is not giving others what they deserve or what they need or what is due to them. He's taking it away from them. He's a thief, and hence everything he consumes is only pap. He's only consuming sins. So if he's consuming sins, he's going to get bonded and he will pay for it. So any selfish act means that you are, as far as Gita is concerned, you are being a thief and you are incurring sins. Very, very, very strong statement. Very strong statement.
And if you think of it simply, we understand this at a gross level. Like if my son comes up to me and he makes a "I love you, Dad" card and all in school, he comes and he gives it to me. Half the time I know Bugger wants something in return, right? He's doing it so that he'll get something in return. And it's the same thing with Bhagwanji. Is if we take care of his world with the right principles, we will get a lot more in return. But if we take from the universe because I want it for my happiness and my self goals, then in the house of Lord, where everything is his, that person is a thief, right? He's taken something from the universe, not given it back. He's taken more than he's given. That is a thief, right? But when you operate with the right principle, you will get that nectar. You will get much more than you've asked for. Just like my kid, if he comes and he makes this well, he's 5 years old, so pretty ugly card, but it's the bhav that counts. And then he asks something, your heart melts. You're just like, beta, go khale ice cream, go eat, no worries. I'll talk to mother. So it's the same thing with Bhagwan Ji. If we are able to live it with the right principles, express our love and our gratitude and do it for the benefit of the community, we will get a lot more in return.
And Bhagwan Ji has also stated in another shloka, and I'm not remembering the exact shloka, but he has stated that this life that we have, the Manushya life, even though it is so small compared to all the other, like if you look at it at a universal level, the number of other lives we've had to live before we get this very special human life, even if it is very small, 70 years, 80 years, 100 years at most, right? It's very small, but it's a karam bhumi. It's that field. It is a magical field that whatever you put in this field, whatever seeds you sow in this field, will bear fruit for several generations after, and several lives after. One seed is going to sow, that you sow, will generate fruits many times after. Just like one seed of mango will give you so many more mangoes. This is that field. So be very careful of the seeds that we sow through our thoughts, through our feelings, through our emotions, through our words, through our actions. Every minute we are sowing seeds, which will bear fruit. Yeah. Let's read.
Nectar of the resultant product of yajna. In the Havan fire oblation, what remains after offering oblations in the shape of sweets or fruits is considered as prasad or benediction. But according to the wider definition of yajnas given by the Lord, what remains after yajna is pure mind, free of all taints of sins due to the selfless performance of duties with dedication to the Lord. The bliss obtained by dedicating all actions to the Lord is so intense that compared to it, all pleasures of the world pale into insignificance. This purity of thought and resultant bliss is truly the nectar of resultant product of yajna. One who partakes of this nectar attains the Lord. Thus, while living in the world, one is ever absorbed in enjoyment of dedicated feeling, and on leaving the mortal coil, such a one attains the supreme state. Those who do not perform their duties as yajna suffer the strain of exertion involved in execution of their work, and in addition, they are always plagued by tribulations, worries, and sorrows of the world. The negative thoughts cultivated in life act as impulsions for birth in lower forms of life, which entail endless suffering and tortures. Performance of yajna bring all merited pleasures of the world, along with unshaken peace and happiness of mind in this life. Thereafter, one attains a state of supreme perfection.
I think we've talked a lot about this, so we will go on from here.
Just wanted to add a couple of things. One, it's called Avirbaha, like what others deserve and you'll have to give to them. It's called Avirbaha. So even in the oblations, what you are giving to the gods. So specific. So if you are summoning specific deity and so on, it is called Avirbaha. That is one thing. Second one is like when even Abhinav was mentioning about like giving, you will get more, right? Like one sample, like on the last week that I was mentioning, right? Last couple of weeks back when I was, when we were talking about Kavita's birthday and so on. So management came back that like you can donate another few of the laptops, you use laptops and so on. So, and even the suggestions that started flowing in, right? Like to what type of this thing. So specifically, there are a couple of other friends who came back that this kids with special needs are looking for a lot of support. So why don't we focus on that? So can you find something around that? So it's over on top of the call of duty, but it was, you will feel very satisfied as well, right? To do that kind of work. So that is the way that you typically being blessed. So what you like the more, getting to do it on behalf of the company, on behalf of friends, family, and everybody. Right? Like, so that is the major things. And on seeing that, like, typically it's not about the kind of like trumpeting part. I never wanted to do that kind of telling out loud, all that kind of thing. When I do something, I'll try to keep it very low key, because we are just the agents, right? We are just doing what God says. So, but I've learned slightly differently probably after this sessions. But so when you start telling, like last time, even like my HR folks wanted to put it in office forum, quorum, and so on. I denied, don't put all this into the office quorum. It is not like very this thing. But then, like, once it is done, it opened up another channel. I got another 5 laptops and 10 laptops and 5 printers to give away, kind of a thing. So that kind of thing, along with some suggestions, can we check out, like, these are hard times for kids with special needs and teachers who are supporting them, because they are getting all the other aids and so on, not the remote education type of aids. So that is where they are struggling. So those kind of inputs also we have gotten, which we were able to do that. So just wanted to add these. Thank you.
For sharing, Vijay. Thank you so much. And like what Vijay was saying, right? That he typically likes to keep things to himself when he does something. It's a very good bhav to have, right? Because when we try and project, when we tell people what we are doing, sometimes that sense of aham, ego can come in, creep in without us even knowing. But it is not about the action, like he just saw, right? It is not about the action. As long as the bhav is correct, then the action doesn't matter. Now, if his bhav is that I'm going to tell about this in the office forum, not because he wants any kind of like people will acknowledge him, that is not the purpose. The purpose was to let other people know, so that you never know what things open up. And when that bhav was there, see how many things opened up for him. Bhagwanji opened that. So it's the same action where you are telling people about what you've done, but the bhav is different. It is in line with Bhagwanji. It is in line with the duty and the right yagya bhav. So Bhagwanji will create so many more avenues, and so much of help will come in a sahaj bhav, in a sahaj manner, as you will experience. Whereas when we are not doing things with yagya bhav, there is so much of toil, exertion, effort that happens in doing something. It's very difficult. Like there is anxiety, there is tension, the effort. And then after you do it also, then there is further exertion, and there is mind is not at peace, because you are attached to the end result. So you're constantly thinking, what will happen after this, what will happen after this, what will the result be like? So there is this we will read more about the concepts of the gunas we had touched upon lightly before. So here we'll get deeper into rajasic guna that has been talked of in the second paragraph, and the previous one is sattvic guna. So when we are acting, sattvic actions are being done with a sattvic bhav, how they lead to calmness and happiness, satoguni happiness. We'll get into a lot of details about this. So the example that Vijay has shared, we can get into several deeper layers of it and start to see how and why same actions but with different bhav that have accompanied it can lead to such different results. I'm not talking about the results in the material world, but in our own mental state and our sense of happiness and calmness, our sthirta, centeredness. Thank you.
So,
You can do one more.
yeah, no, so the one marking that I don't know if you shared, but the one thing, the note that I wanted to talk about in this shloka was the question is, why do we feel happier if we do yagya, if we do things with yagya bhav? And the answer is in this shloka is because it is our true nature. When we look for happiness outside, as we've explained earlier, we are looking for an expression of our true nature, which is happiness, which is why we're attracted to happiness. It's like moths being attracted to a light bulb. right? It's the same way we are attracted to happiness. Anything we feel that can make us eternally happy, we will go chase it, right? But we all know that we've discussed this in the past as well. Anything in samsara is temporary. That means nothing in samsara will give you eternal happiness. But when we perform things with yajna, the reason why we experience that nectar or bliss that Veena was talking about is because we come closer to expressing and experiencing our true nature and our true self, right? Which is why a person who was living in the Holocaust, in Auschwitz, in Poland. Everyone knows Holocaust, right? Where the World War II and the concentration camps that were placed. He was a psychologist, a Jewish psychologist. And I don't know if you've read this book. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning. Holocaust was as bad as I'm sure all of us know and all of us can imagine. In that place, in those barracks, he said, I still have a place inside of me where I can be complete and happy, right? And that just goes to, and you should definitely read that book. It's a very heavy book, but it's beautifully explained on how happiness and eternal happiness definitely doesn't exist outside. It exists inside. And that's an expression of our true nature. Yeah, I think we have time for one.
Rituj, will you read with us?
At this stage, two doubts arise in the minds of an inquisitive aspirant. One is whether the performance of different yagyas helps in attainment of the same goal. The second is whether all these yagyas carry any scriptural sanction. Replying to these 2 points, the Lord says,
Evam bahuvidha yajnaha
Eva bahuvidha yagyah
vetata brahmano mukhe
Vidita brahmano mukhe
karma jan vidhi tan sarva
Karma jan vidhi tan sarvaha
evam nyatva vimokshase.
Evam gyatva vimokshase.
So evam is like this. Bahuvidha, many different types. Yajna, the yagyas. Vitata, described in detail. Brahmano mukhe, basically Brahman ki vani se. In this, the voice or the speech of the Brahmans. In this case, it refers to the words of the Vedas. The words of the Vedas. So Brahmana is Vedas, mukhe, the words. Karma jan vidhi. Karma jan is born of action involving body, mind, and senses. Vidhi jankar, by knowing them. Tan sarvan. Tan is unko, un sabko, all those. Tan sarvan, all those. Evam Nyatva is knowing. Vimokshase is nirvana or emancipation, self-realization.
In this way, numerous yagyas have been elaborated in the Vedas, but know them all to be born out of action. Knowing them as such, you will attain emancipation. Consummation of yagyas by action. This important shlok lays down that all the yagyas represent in effect well-regulated actions at the level of mind, senses, and body. Since they have been elaborately explained in the Vedas, they carry scriptural sanctions. Their forms may be different depending upon the capacity, capability, and circumstances of the performer, but all of them have the features of Karma Yoga in common, namely selfless action, and dedication to the Lord.
So here it's important, again, I think, to remind all of us uh, that everything that happens in nature happens based on these principles. These principles aren't prescribed for human beings alone. These principles are the principles of nature, which is everyone will act according to their nature, not for their selfish gain, but for their onward benefit. So I think in chapter 3, we had given the example of how the sun does its duty every day by coming in the morning. I mean, we call it morning because we can see it, and it goes sunset. Because of the heat and the light, water evaporates and it forms clouds. Over a period of time, the clouds become denser and denser and denser till the wind comes. It moves the clouds, it hits the mountain. What does the cloud do? It rains. But what does that enable? That enables all of life. All the seeds that are planted, they sprout out and they give life. Now, each element of that action has been done with the Yagya Bhav or Yogakshem in mind, where it is happening out of its true nature for somebody else's benefit. It's just doing its own nature, right? Similarly, in our body, all these little functions that are happening, each function is happening based on its own capability, based on its own capacity, without expecting anything in return. My right hand doesn't perform only if I give it a massage at night, right? My food will not stop digesting and if I don't pamper my stomach a little bit. No, it will continue doing its nature till you break it by putting a lot of unhealthy food. Then it will be then this system will revolt, right? Because you're not taking care of it. So when all of this gets put together and we get formed as a human being, why would we think that this principle does not apply to us? Right? Why would we then say, no, we have to do things for our own benefit? If I don't take care of myself, then who will? And this is the great disconnect, where everything in the world externally as well as internally is being moved forward by this principle. Then the only way for us to be and us to be happy is to be in line with that principle.
And when we're in line with this principle, it's like we are flowing in the direction of the water, the way that the river is flowing. And when we are trying to do the opposite, when we become that barrier, because we're not flowing with the river, we try to become a barrier in the flow of things, then naturally we will feel the force of the universe against us, because we're trying to go against the law of nature.
So, and as long as we have a body, we will have action. We've already discovered that. And as long as you have action, you have an opportunity to do yagya. And we read about that in the previous shloka about a breath. If nothing else, you're breathing. And even at the breath level, we can practice yagya bhav.
And I think another thing to remember, why do we, when we think about doing yagya bhav, right? Every time people, one of the first things that comes to generally with the mind would be like, if I don't look after myself, then who will look after me, right? I have to look after my self-interest because nobody else will look out for me. The point is actually think about it, right? This body, the life, this entire life, this life experience, all of this is not in our control. Like I did not choose to be born. I did not choose to be born in a certain way, to whom, and I have no control over my breath. I have no control over my life. So, and if we think that, we have to do things to earn our bread, to keep us alive, actually we can have a long conversation around this, but very, very short, in a very short this thing, because we have very little time left. If our life was in our hands, then no rich person would die. But it doesn't matter. Rich people will also die. When the time comes, that person will give up this life and go. will give up all his acquisitions and go. And if your time has not come, there is no power in this world that can take your life away. So your life, your birth, your death, nothing is in your control. So if nothing is in our control, it is in somebody else's control, then why it's only natural for you to think, why has it been given to me? It has been given to me by somebody to do his work. It's like I have a helper, I give her $100 and I tell her, go buy these groceries from the shop. If she takes those $100, she goes into the market and then she goes and does whatever she wants and she comes back. Am I going to be happy or unhappy? And if she decides to buy things for her own self, then you would call that person a thief, right? All the resources have been given to a person by someone else to do their work. And that person decides to do his own thing. As another example, an officer in an office is given all the things like his desk, his office space, people to help him with, he's been given a car, all of that he's been given to do his duty. If he starts to make use of all of these things for his personal use, then that person is misusing the resources. Right? He's supposed to use it in the line of his duty. As long as he's doing them in the line of his duty, he will be given more and more resources, more and more duty, more and more, like he'll get all the benefits that will come from doing his duty. But the moment he starts to use it for his own personal benefit, then he will be considered a thief. And he can be anytime removed from that place.
And it's not necessarily as well. Some people will justify it, "Arey, mujhe promotion mil gaya. I used it for my benefit and the company obviously
you can
benefit
it, or you can use it, you can justify it, but basically, why has the company given you those resources? Has the company given you the car to go and do your own work, or have they given it to do your office's work? Now here again, there's a distinction between a good person and a person who does his work by duty. A good person in this case would be a person who, when he's given these resources, somebody has given you resources, okay, you've been given $100,000, go buy these computers have to be bought. Now this person takes the money, goes to the market. He's a good person at heart, okay, but he doesn't know what he forgets. When he goes to the market, he forgets what he has been asked to get, and then he looks around and using his own buddhi, he decides, oh, there's a very beautiful couch. This is a very nice sofa and couch, very important for my office. When I take it back, people will benefit from it. Good person at heart, trying to do something right for his office. He goes, spends all that money on that sofa, couch, gets it back. Now, is he going to get shabashi? He's not going to get shabashi. Dude, I gave you the money to go buy a monitor or a computer for the office, and you bought this instead. Good person, but the wrong thing. He's still not going to get any benefit. This is what happens to good people in the world. Good people who do not know what is their duty. Why have they been sent in this world? What are you supposed to do? So they will keep on doing good things and then say, oh, I am doing good only. I don't know why I keep getting bad stuff in return. I'm a good person. I'm not hurting anybody. That is what happens to good people. So that is why it's very important for us to know what our duty is and do that duty. And our duty is very clearly defined in the scriptures. Let's read ahead.
It is these features which would enable their performer to attain liberation. Being equipped with mind, senses, and physical form constitutes an obligation for engaging in action. And if the actions are performed as yagyas, liberation is bound to be attained.
Very, very powerful shloka that we've completed now. Thank you.
So what I would request is after the class, anytime today or tomorrow, it would be great as a takeaway if you could share an example or two where you think you could bring yagya into your actions. Any one, any two examples that and use an example. I'm only trying to make it conscious for you and all of us. So as you share, it will be a light bulb for all of us to realize, oh, I can also do it somewhere there. So the sharing is an act of lok sangraha as well. And the
Just
second
Sehe
is,
Yagya, right? Sehe Yagya. We are all doing this yagya together.
and the second is, as you become conscious when you write it out, that is the first step of manifestation. You've written it out, you've created a reality to it. So it'll be easier for you to recall your own practice of doing that yagya. Yeah. So it would be great for this class, at least let's do it. And then next week, we can always have a little bit of sharing on how the experience was with that practice. And I will also make sure that I write an example as well. Cool. All right. Bhageshri, closing shlokas. So you, after the closing shlokas, Bhageshri, just close with Om 3 times.
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ Oh. Oh.
Thank you so much, Bhageshri. That was really, really beautiful. Thank you. Before we close the class, I know we are 2 minutes above. I just want to give you with one last thing. So Maya ji, who stays in Bangalore and she's guiding our entire parivar, she has asked, and it's not a compulsion, but has suggested that in every class, if possible, we should read one of the bhajans. We should sing one of the bhajans. It's a particular bhajan, and it's part of it's part of a book called Pad Ratnakar. Pad Ratnakar is a book of collection of 1600 pad that have been written by Babaji, Sri Hanuman Podarji, Babuji. So one of them is this bhajan that has been recommended by Mayaji. So she keeps recommending different types of practices at different points of time, which typically, they always end up benefiting us. Like in previously, just before there was this big wave in India, she had suggested that for 40 days we practice Hanuman Chalisa was to be read. So now she has suggested one particular bhajan, and that particular bhajan is actually in the Gorakhpur in Gita Press. They read it, they sing it before the start of the day. Like, when in schools we start off with a prayer. So this pad is sung as a prayer before everyone starts their their day in Gita Press. It's a very beautiful bhajan, and it encapsulates Karma Yoga in a very powerful way. So I think it would be beautiful, since we have read chapter 3 already and we are almost at the end of chapter 4. We all understand the precepts of Karma Yoga. It will be a great way for us to remind ourselves what we must do and how we should live our day. So we will learn, we will sing this bhajan, and it will also be a great small stepping stone towards our second shatak, the second shatak that starts from chapter 7 onwards. It's called Bhakti Yoga. So right now in the first 6 chapters are related to Karma Yoga, which we are reading. The next shatak is going to be Bhakti Yoga. So this would be a small, mellifluous and a very beautiful small starting point to get ourselves towards Bhakti Yoga as well. So we'll sing this at the end of our class. In the next class, me, maybe Abhinav, if he wants to participate, we will sing this in our next class. And post that, we'll start a new roster. Whoever, there is no compulsion, whoever wants to participate, please feel free to put your name in the roster. And you want to sing it, please go ahead. And remember, we are not singing for each other, we are singing for the Lord. So we'll sing for him, and we'll keep it that way. I'm not a great singer, as you will discover in the next class. And we'll take it from there. So I will share the bhajan itself, the recording of it in our WhatsApp group, and also Maiyaji's explanation of this bhajan and what it means. I'll share it in the WhatsApp groups for us to become aware of it, to learn it, and to understand it. And then we'll start singing it in the next class. Okay. Thank you. Narayan, Narayan.
Thank you.
Narayan, Narayan, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Narayan, Narayan, thank you.